Welcome to the Lifestyle Builders Podcast, Show 15. In our last episode, we chatted with special guest Dale Hensel. Today, we're talking about some of the biggest productivity drains, 5 of them to be exact.
Welcome to the Lifestyle Builders Podcast, where we bring you real-life strategies on starting and growing a business and finding financial freedom without sacrificing the life you have with your loved ones. We are your hosts, Tom and Ariana Sylvester, and we are married, we're parents, and we're serial entrepreneurs. This podcast is for those who want more out of life. We'll show you how to take the vision you have and create the business that will help you achieve it. Join us as we share practical steps, real-life stories, and help you become a lifestyle builder.
All right, you guys, welcome back to the Lifestyle Builders Podcast. And we're talking about a pretty important topic today.
We always say that, don't we?
I think we say that every single episode.
Well, this one really is.
Productivity. Everyone talks about, I want to be more productive. I want to get more done. And there's a lot of different thoughts out there. There's a lot of different ways or tactics and whatnot for, people to say, oh, well, you'll get more time back. You do this and you get more time back. So today we're going to talk about 5 of the biggest drains on your productivity and then the solutions for those so that you're not just tackling your productivity by trying tactics, you're actually building a foundation of a better work ethic in the way that you work.
You are hanging out with me way too much.
I'm hanging out with you way too much.
Listen to you.
But first, I want to talk about a bit of a productivity snafu, I guess you could call it, that somebody made back when we were in college.
Oh, Final Fantasy?
No, that's a huge productivity thing, but no, that's not the one I'm talking about. We'll bring that up on another episode. I'm talking about the fact that not only did you go in declaring a major, you also declared 3 minors. 3!
Yes, I did.
And did you finish any of those?
I got about half done with each of them.
Yeah, I don't think that counts as finishing them. I think that qualifies them as unfinished. So this is common for a lot of us. We go in and we always try to do more than we can. We always are putting more on our plates than we can take in.
Well, I was going to say, and so since you brought up the minors, let's talk about that. So when I went into school, I had a computer science major, and then I was like, oh, I like writing, so let me take some writing classes.
Nerd.
Yeah, well, we knew that. And then so I was taking the writing classes, and then I was like, well, I also kind of like philosophy, so let me go take some philosophy classes, which were pretty cool, by the way. I'm definitely a nerd.
You are.
And then someone told me, well, for your career, those aren't really going to help you, but if you have a math minor, then that'll help you. So what I did was I bounced around based on like what I felt at the moment or what somebody else was telling me. And that's what caused me to not have any of the minors. So instead of like finishing college with 1 minor complete, I finished with 3 half complete, which means I didn't have any minors in college.
Correct.
And that's a lot of what happens with us is that we do a lot of things and we have a lot of like half done things and we don't actually finish any of them.
Yep.
And one of the big challenges that comes up with that is that all those half done things weigh on us.
Yes.
So like just mentally.
Nobody likes not finishing something.
Yeah, well, and mentally it's like, well, I got to do this and I got to do that, and well, like this is almost done, and that weighs on people so much. Mm-hmm. Whereas like if you have like 1 major and you just focus on getting that thing done.
Ding ding ding.
Ding ding ding. We won't talk about what the major was.
We'll talk about what the major was.
But yeah, it makes it so much easier, and we'll talk about a lot of that on the show today.
Yeah. Well, it brings us to our first topic. The reason a lot of people don't get anything they want to done is because we like to multitask.
Well, I'm an expert at multitasking. I can do 20 things at once.
I actually do say I'm good at multitasking because I feel like part of being a mom, you just learn to multitask. But I think that's why I'm so exhausted all the time because my brain is constantly switching back and forth between all of these things I'm trying to do.
So you want me to prove you wrong on that?
No, I don't. I know funny. It's wrong. I'm not actually good at multitasking. I'm just really good at switching back and forth.
Yeah, it was awesome. When I was doing like corporate consulting with like leaders, I would always have leaders that were like, well, I have to multitask in my position and I'm really good at it. And I would just run like some of these like simulations or games. And a lot of times I would do it like in front of their team just to basically prove that like as humans, we're actually, our brains are not wired to multitask.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so our brains are just really good at switching back and forth between things. And we can't do that. And when we try to switch back and forth between things, we end up creating what's called switching cost. And basically what that means is, and like we have kids, so we see it all the time, right? So you're focused on something, maybe you're writing, and then the kid says, Mommy, I want ice cream. I want a snack.
It's always a snack.
Yeah.
I need a snack.
And then so it's like, okay, give me a second, let me go get that. And then you come back and it's like, okay, where was I? I got to read the last paragraph of what I was writing. And most people end up losing so much time throughout the day because they keep switching between all these different tasks, and they literally lose time because they would have got that task done in, let's say, 2 hours, but it ended up taking them 4 hours or 6 hours to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. As a parent, I feel like I have like 30 Chrome tabs open in my head at any given time. And while I've trained my brain to be really good at remembering like all of those things, it's also exhausting because that means my brain can never just focus on one thing. I'm always thinking about the other stuff. And sometimes I think my brain just gives up, and then I have like what they call the mom brain, and I can't remember words, or I can't think of things that I just said 5 seconds ago because my brain is literally just like, all right, I'm done. I'm done for the day. I'm out.
Well, I was going to say, on a previous episode, we talked about the book Getting Things Done. And I loved what he talked about in that book. He said, and you love doing this, a brain dump.
Yep.
And what he says is so much of us walk around carrying all the things we got to do, all the to-do lists in our head. And I love your analogy of the Chrome browser, right? All these browser tabs. Because what he talks about is it's like computer RAM. Your computer only has so much RAM that it can store in there. And when we try to store all the things in our head, we actually get to a point where like everything slows down and we can't focus on things.
Yeah.
So what he talks about is like being calm like water, getting all that out of your head and then focusing on like the one thing you need to do and having a place where you can have everything else. And as long as you do that, then it's so much easier to focus and not have your brain cluttered with like everything you got to do.
On our tools episode, we use Evernote. Evernote is like our brain dump. Every time I think of something else, then I'm like, oh, shoot, this is a great idea, and I don't want to lose it. Instead of, like, trying to keep it in my brain and being like, I got to remember this idea, or writing it down on some random Post-it note somewhere and then losing the Post-it note and freaking out. Evernote. That is where I put everything. I mean, I plan our agendas for conferences in there because, like, planning is something that I'm very not weird about, but it's just that weighs on my brain when we know we have to do something and there's a lot of planning involved. Rather than waiting and freaking myself out like the day before, I'll try to plan stuff as far in ahead as I can because that takes the pressure off me. So now, Evernote, we have like a live event folder in there, and that's where I keep all the stuff. Here's our flights, here's our hotel, here's the agenda for the kids and the grandmas watching them. So that way, I'm not worried about that stuff. I can get that right out of my brain and get back to the focused tasks that I'm trying to work on.
Yeah, well, and so a key thing when it comes to not multitasking, there's this concept called WIP, your work in process.
Whip it good.
Whip it good. There we go. That's the song reference. There you go. I didn't even mean that one. But yeah, so it's work in process, and a lot of my background is in productivity and how to maximize value and reduce waste. And one of the biggest ways to do that is to cut multitasking, and they say put a WIP limit on things. So basically, I think we've talked about like Scrum before, and so when you make a Scrum board, you have 3 basic things. The things you have to do, the things you're doing, and the things you've completed. And one of the biggest tips that you can give people is in the things that you're doing, you put a WIP limit of, say, 2 on there. And, research has shown that having 2 things in your doing column is the best for productivity. What that means is that you're going to focus on one, but if you get blocked on that first one because you're waiting for something, then you can swap over and not really lose time. So when you're planning out your system or your day, what you want to do is only focus on 1 to 2 things at a time, and then you don't pull a new task in until you complete one of those and you move it to done.
Well, we've talked about this on the old show we talked about Kanban board and the Scrum concept and a lot of that stuff. I don't remember the episode number, so I was gonna say we'll pull it up and link to it in the show notes.
Well, and what we'll do in the future, we'll have a whole show on that.
Yeah, that would be good.
And we'll really talk through how to set that up and how to think about that, because this is one of the biggest things that I used to help large businesses with, and even bringing it down to like small businesses and entrepreneurs. It's amazing just how much more productive you can be.
Basis of our weekly planning or quarterly, monthly, like that. Our Kanban board is the foundation of all of that.
Yep.
And you brought it home from work with you. And
I did.
We used to have a humongous Kanban board on our wall in the basement.
Well, that's how I would start everybody out. And
I think the old post has pictures of it.
I think it does. I was going to say, so if you guys want to see like the epic planning wall we used to have, you can check it out in the show notes at tomandariana.com/15.
Yes.
And, with that, I think what also comes into the part of this is, like you said, planning things out. Right, so our weekly planning is a big time where we can say, these are the things we've got to get done this week, and then we actually pull up our calendars and kind of say, okay, this block of time we're going to focus on specific tasks.
Yeah, you like to, instead of multitasking, Tom's a huge proponent of batching and time blocking. Yep. So batching is basically taking a lot of the tasks that are all the same, like checking email, responding to email, any kind of writing or creative brainstorming, and batching all of that stuff together and doing it not at the same time, but you do it all within a time period. Yep. So that your brain isn't switching between tasks, it's staying on the same type of task, and you're getting more than one thing done though, because you're batching multiple together. So like we batch record our podcasts.
Oh, you let the cat out of the bag.
I let the cat out of the bag. But it's the best way to do it. Like we have an entire day. We prep. We get the space ready. We're mentally ready. We get all of our notes ready on like which episodes we're recording. And then we can just go.
Well, and here's the reality. Any productive business is utilizing batching. And
John Lee Dumas utilized batching on EO Fire.
Well, I was going to say, and John's
and
a master.
The best batching ability I've ever seen.
Absolutely. Well, I remember, so Kate, like that was one of the things that Kate and us really gelled on, because when we had our presentation, Kate walked in and we actually ran our presentation with a Scrum board, and Kate's like, I'm in love with you guys. But the other thing I think with that too, if you think about even just like the TV show you watch, right? It's not like they're recording that TV show and like they're batching it, right? They go through and they record the whole season, and then they go through and edit it, and then they go through and release it on time. What that allows them to do is then not have to constantly be like trying to record a new episode, right? And that's where a lot of people get into trouble and they get behind, is because they're trying to multitask and do all these different things, where it's like if you batch that and have the processes. Well, it's just like batching your planning.
Yeah. We batch our planning. We take an entire day every quarter and we do planning for all the businesses and for our personal life. So instead of like trying to do some planning here for this business and then going back to work, and then like a week later doing some planning for this business, going back to work, we get into planning mode and we do all the planning. Now, it is a little exhausting, I'll admit, but we feel so much better because then we've taken that time to set aside and plan out all the stuff we need to get done, which then allows us to immediately get to work on all the stuff.
Well, I was going to say, so with that, like your brain, like our brains struggle with switching from big picture thinking to like day-to-day execution.
Yeah, like creativity mode to focused work mode. Yep. It's the same sort of concept there. Like I can't go from being like creative writing and brainstorming all these big ideas to like, oh, now I'm going to focus down on these little tiny daily tasks that I have to do. It's way too weird. My brain's like, what are you trying to do? I'm not ready to think creatively. We're doing things.
Yeah, well, and that even goes back to the multitasking. If you're trying to think big and then think small and then think big, and this thing pulls you in, it's a mess. Yeah. So key takeaway, don't multitask. And, focus on putting those systems and processes in place so that you can get it all out of your head, you can get it organized, and then you focus on 1 to 2 things.
You're skipping ahead to some of our other topics. But that's
it's just a great lead-in.
I know, it is a great lead-in. Topic number 2, one of the second biggest productivity drains is distractions. And you just talked about it a little bit when you talked about multitasking.
Squirrel.
Like getting weirdo. You dug from Up.
Wow. Wow, reference.
Yeah.
You can tell you're a parent when. But anyways, distractions. I just got distracted.
You just got distracted. We all get distracted. We all get distracted by different things, but one of the biggest distractions is your phone, your smartphone.
Especially these
all
days.
The little dings and the buzzes and the lights blinking at you, and social media, like every 2 seconds somebody's liking your post or commenting on it.
Sorry.
Checking your phone. Well, see what you did there. So one of the easiest ways to be more productive is to train yourself to tune all that out. So turn off your notifications on your phone.
And part of it isn't even training yourself. It's just changing those so that they don't even come up in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Turn it off on your phone. Don't open Facebook in your browser. Turn off desktop notifications for things like Google Calendar or whatever you've got that pops up in the corner.
Wait, but if I turn all these off, how am I going to be connected to all the important things going on?
You will when you specifically set aside a time to check on them later.
I'll tell you what, when I was in corporate, this was one of the biggest changes I made to just skyrocket my productivity. And I mean, you don't have to be in corporate, but what I saw was in corporate, everyone had like Outlook, and they had the little notification every time they got an email. And I actually did an experiment where I tracked how many emails I got a day. And it was like hundreds.
Oy.
And so you imagine, we just talked about multitasking. Imagine you're working on something and then that little thing pops up, which we all have happen. If that happens 150 times a day and it pulls you away,
even if you're not clicking on it to read it,
it distracts your mind.
Go over for a few seconds to read like the little summary of the notification to see like who it's from and the subject line. And then you're trying to go back to work. So
we talk about that switching cost. That happens so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the people that do go and read it, that's even worse.
Yeah.
So what I actually did, and I got a lot of crap for this, but it actually worked out really well. I decided that twice a day I was going to check email. I checked email at 11:30 and I checked email at 3:30. And I actually set an autoresponder up that said, hey, I'm busy being productive. If you want to get a hold of me and this is important.
Really say that,
I did. I can't believe I didn't get fired. But I'm like, if this is important, here's my number. Please give me a call. If it's not, I check email at these 2 times and I'll get back to you.
Ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. I really don't know how I never got fired from corporate.
Get back to me later.
Well, so here's what happened. My number of emails actually dropped in half over the course of a couple weeks. I actually didn't get like any calls. So all that crap that was coming into my email wasn't urgent.
Yep.
Most of it wasn't important. And I was so much more productive because I started my day out knocking out my biggest tasks.
Yeah. And I've actually taken a page from your book, and I try not to check my email throughout the day. So I usually check like once in the morning, once at lunch, and then again at night. And that's it, because it's the same thing. Like I don't even really need to be checking. There's nothing that urgent in there, but you get that little notification thing. And you're like, oh, let me check my email. I got an email.
I was gonna say Pavlov's dog, right?
Yep.
Like, so we've all now been trained that when my phone buzzes in my pocket or when I hear that notification, I gotta go check it. And then like there's this whole phenomenon where like people feel their phone buzzing when their phone isn't
all the time.
when their phone isn't even in their pocket.
Ever. I'm like, oh, my phone's buzzing. Nope, that's nothing at all.
No, it's on the table over there. It's not even in my pocket. But yeah, so notifications, it leads directly into multitasking. And, one of the biggest things that we tell people to do when we do ourselves is just to turn them off.
Yep.
And, there's different apps that can help you with that. But oftentimes just going into whatever apps you're using and just saying, I don't want to be notified. Or I only want to be, like, a lot of apps will have a snooze time, so you don't get notifications, and then you can turn it back on.
Yeah, and I mean, I've just gone as far as leaving my phone not next to me.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because the only thing that I really need that for during the day is a call, and that the only calls I'm really concerned about are from the school or the daycare.
Yep.
Other than that, I don't really need it.
Well, and you can set up, like, special rings on most phones so that
mine's
when
always on vibrate, because I don't know. I haven't had a ringer on.
But even with that, you can set up so when a certain number calls, it will ring and it'll give a certain tone. So that way, if an important number comes through, you know.
Oh, I know what I'm doing after this episode.
There we go.
Oh, and the other thing I wanted to mention too, not necessarily a distraction, but it's almost like an out when you're trying to do work and something comes up and you've got like a block or you're not being as productive as you want. It's almost like we use social media as an excuse to get out of things that we don't want to do or we're not doing well. So, I just need to take a break. And then you take your phone and you check social media, and like 30 minutes later, you're like, oh, that's right, I was supposed to be working. but we've got that in the back of our mind. Like, we know that we have notifications, so a lot of times it becomes an excuse. And, oh, well, I just need to check my phone. And then as soon as you swipe and you see the 30 new notifications, it's like you have to train your brain to not care about those. Or, as Tom said, turn them off so that you don't actually know how many notifications you get until you've opened Facebook, and then you're just kind of out of luck.
Well, and this is where like the Pomodoro technique works a lot too. Mm-hmm. So let's say that you don't want to necessarily hold those things until 11:30 and 3:30. Pomodoro basically says you're going to have focus time, and then you're going to have kind of a break. So you can do 25 minutes, you can do 55 minutes. But essentially what you do is you say, I set a timer, and I'm going to focus on getting this one task done. We're all tying this back together,
mm-hmm.
right? The one task in your to-do or your doing column, you're going to focus just on that for 25 minutes. And then when it dings, basically your 25 minutes are up, you then take a 5-minute break.
And that could be going to the bathroom, that could be just getting up and walking around, that could be getting a snack, or it could be checking your Facebook or your email.
But then when that dings again,
mm-hmm.
you're done and you're back to focusing on your task.
Yep.
And like we'll do co-working a lot of times with people and do this activity. And, you know, people are like, I just got more done in like 2 hours than I get done in like some days.
Yeah, well, and Pomodoros are nice, but when you're by yourself, you only have yourself to hold you accountable. If you can find other people to jump in, like we like to do our co-working sessions with our lifestyle builders, and we literally will set aside 2 hours and say, hey, we're going to be doing co-working. We're going to be having the Pomodoro timer on. We're also going to be working during those sessions. Come on in. We're all gonna say what we're gonna get done in the next 25 minutes. We'll set the timer, we work, and then for that 5 minutes after, we take our break, declare what we're going to get done for the next 25 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's been working really well because it's that public accountability of people like, I just told 5 people I'm going to get this done in 25 minutes. I'm going to get my butt to work.
Absolutely. And, you know, so we just did a modified version of that to help people really define who their ideal customer is and then kind of map out their journey to give them a lot more clarity. And a lot of people, like everyone says, you got to really understand your customer. Most of us don't actually sit down and take the time to do it because it's hard.
Yeah.
But what we found was that by doing that and then having people come back and share what they did afterwards, it made people sit down and do it. And then that sharing it publicly, it helped everybody else out too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like being able to not have the distractions, to focus on that one thing, it is then key to 1, feeling productive, and then 2, actually being productive.
Yeah. All right, so we already kind of touched on topics 3 and 4 a little bit. Tom touched on the solutions of them, and but you know it all ties together in reality, so it's okay. Topic. I keep saying topic.
You can see Ariana's OCD tendencies a little bit here. Like I'm just we'll just like talk about whatever
in order. Productivity drain number 3 is you have trouble keeping track of everything.
Yeah, and there's a lot to keep track of.
So we touched on this a little bit in number 1, where we tend to multitask, we tend to put too much on our plate. If you can't keep track of everything, you are not going to feel productive because you're going to be worried about all that stuff in your head that you didn't get down somewhere. You're going to be worried about the fact that you put something on a Post-it note and then over here you got it on your phone and maybe you email it to yourself. Everything is all over the place. And that creates more stress and more pressure on you to do all those things. They're not in a nice, organized spot where you know, hey, here's all my stuff. I don't have to worry that I'm missing anything. I don't have to worry that I'm forgetting anything. If you can't keep track of everything, it just makes it so much worse for you.
Well, I was going to say, like, we see so many people that, you know, let's say you're going to start your day at 8 o'clock. So you sit down at 8 o'clock and you're like, okay, what am I going to do today? So then you maybe go and check your email to give some indication. You go and look at your calendar and then, oh, this notification pops up. And because you didn't know what you were going to do and you didn't have a system to be able to go to, you might have an hour or 2 go in and you're like, oh, crap, now that I finally have all the stuff I got to do, I'm going to start doing it. But you just lost 2 hours trying to plan your day out.
Yep.
Right. But if you can, like you said, with our weekly planning, we basically plan out what we need to do for the week. And then we do our quick kind of touch-in in the morning just to focus on, hey, 10 minutes, let's figure out what we got to work on today, and then we can go and do it.
Well, and that goes into the number 4 biggest drain is you don't know what you need to do. So that kind of goes hand in hand with if you don't keep track of everything, you don't know what you need to do because there's stuff all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
So as Tom said, if you are trying to figure out like, oh, what am I supposed to do today? Well, I know I was going to work on that, and then I was going to work on that over there. And then, oh, yes, this thing came in, and then I remembered I was going to work on that. That goes hand in hand with, do you actually need to do those things? Or are you just doing them because they've come up throughout the day?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, one of the things in Plan with Purpose that we walk people through is how to prioritize. And there's a grid that we show people called the Eisenhower Quadrant that basically plots things on, are they urgent or important, or not urgent and not important.
Yep.
And when you don't plan out your day and you're not sure what you're going to focus on, what tends to happen is all the urgent things come in. And then usually those urgent things are easier to do. So kind of like you said, yeah, this thing's important. This is what I should be doing, but let me go take care of this email because it's quick, or let me go respond to this Facebook message, and then you don't actually, do those key tasks that move things towards your goal.
Well, then you feel bad because you get to the end of the day and you're like, oh, crap, I didn't finish those things I was supposed to finish. And then we carry that over.
Yeah.
And that feeling of, well, I didn't get done what I was supposed to get done. So then you get to the next day, you're like, all right, well, I'm really going to get this stuff done today. And then the same sort of thing happens. And we put that wall up between us and those things we're actually supposed to be working on, because that guilt builds up, like, I keep not getting this done. But then when I go to work on it, I get like, you freeze because it's that big task you're supposed to be doing. Yeah, I'll just do this other stuff because, it's coming in and I really got to get it done. And you end up doing a lot of like the busy work instead of focusing on those bigger tasks, because as it builds up, as you keep not getting it done, it's like becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and scarier. And then you don't want to do it.
Well, and I remember when we were doing a lot of the research before we launched the Lifestyle Builders mentorship community, one of the things that kept coming up as we were talking to people was having that accountability. And like at first, you started putting up a Monday accountability thread where people like posted up what they were going to do, and then we kind of checked back in and they were going to report back. And at first I'm like, okay, there's no way that's going to work. But to be honest, I was amazed at, how many people put that up, and then just how, because they declared it publicly, kind of like with our co-working sessions, they knew that we were then going to be checking back in on the end of the week. And I mean, we've heard from people that they're like, yeah, just putting that up, then because I knew you guys were going to be asking me, made me do it.
You look at how we started, it was like maybe 1 or 2 people would post up at the beginning of the week. The other day, I forgot to put it up until Tuesday. Yes, I realize the irony of that. I did not keep myself accountable to put the post up. Anyways, we had like 8 people post when I posted it on Tuesday.
Yeah.
But they were waiting for me to put that post up because they have figured out when I put that up in the group, and I know all those other 20 some odd people are seeing what I said I was going to get done, it changes that chemistry in your brain to like motivate you and to give you what you need to actually work on those tasks instead of getting sidetracked and distracted.
Well, and the other important thing I think with that too, so we have the blessing and the curse, whichever way you look at it, of working together. So we're holding each other accountable and we're checking in. But a lot of people, especially if they're working on their own, don't necessarily have that. So that was the other thing that I realized there, was that a lot of these people are working at home or they're working by themselves. And just by having that community, they were able to kind of hold each other accountable and feel like even though we're working on our own businesses, we're all in this together to build our businesses more successfully.
Yeah, and what I've seen as well is that when people have a struggle with whatever they posted they were going to get done, or, hey, I've been working on this and it's just not going as planned, they're reaching out for help and support, and we walk them through that. And their group members post up and say, hey, you can do this, you've got this. You get that extra humph to like do that work and get past whatever's holding you back, because you post up and say, hey, I said I was going to do this. Now I'm not getting it done. Can you guys help me out? And you get that support you need. You get that extra motivation that you need. And you get the people asking you some of the questions that kind of help you get past whatever was blocking you.
Well, and I think what's interesting with that too, like I always talk about how fired up I get after like coaching calls. Like I get like so excited. And, one day I was thinking about why that is. And I realized that I'm legit helping people and I see the impact I'm making. And what I've seen too is that when people post up, other people are jumping in and helping, and it's actually helping the people that are giving, because they're like, hey, I just got outside my world, I helped somebody else out, and then we all feel good about that, and then it's often easier to come back into our own work.
Yeah. We went on.
I was gonna say, so I know we got on a little tangent, but this all ties back to, you really want to set your systems up, your processes up, so that you can be productive. So, if you've got 1 million emails coming in, get rid of a lot of those emails, either filter them or unsubscribe so that you don't have all the emails coming in, right? If you're going to want to be productive in your day, set up your day and set up your processes so that you can sit down and maximize that productivity. And it starts with your processes, but then like a previous episode, we talked about all the tools we use. Once you have your processes down and then you put some of those tools in place, then it makes it so much easier. So you won't forget your Monday accountability post if we've got a process and then you've got a tool to schedule it, right? So homework number 2, put that in place.
All right. So let's jump to the last.
I was going to say one more before we jump to the last one.
Just kidding. Take that back. Rewind.
So you were talking about how we have like our quarterly planning day, right? One of the biggest things that I find with people is when they don't do that bigger picture planning, and they're not really clear on what their goals are, that's where the shiny object can come in. And that's where the squirrels can come in. Squirrels. But, like, that's been one of the biggest things for us. Like, we actually just went through and did this for Q2. And we filled out what are our goals, what are the key actions that we got to take, and then that helps us so much more to know. It's basically a filter. When some new opportunity comes in, we say, does this directly tie to our goals? If so, we'll pull it in. If not, we say, not now. We'll look at it again in the future.
It also helps us cut out some of the tasks that we're currently doing. Because they're not going towards those goals that we've declared. And one of the toughest things is getting out of your routine of like, hey, these are all the things that I do. When you redeclare your goals for the next quarter and have to go back and say, wow, so these are my goals. Some of the stuff that I'm doing right now doesn't really align with them, doesn't match up. So it's tough at first to like give up those things that you're used to doing, but it is one of the most helpful parts of doing that goal planning, getting aligned with what you want and saying, well, this doesn't serve that right now, so I'm going to stop doing it.
And that's where, like you've mentioned a couple times, but really setting up your processes and then having time to plan versus time to work. And like I know we keep talking about plan with purpose, but one of the sections we put in there was the different times a year that we plan, and then like how we have that set up so that we get very clear on what we need to do, and then it becomes so much easier to do it.
All right, so I can say it now.
You can say
it. All
it
right. Now. Productivity drain number 5 is hustling versus doing quality work.
I'm a hustler.
Wow, we got double song lyrics today. And Tom used to rap, by the way, just to put that out there.
I even rapped Gandhi on a podcast.
No, I'm talking about before, like when I first
like my freestyles?
Yep. We'll bring that up on another episode.
Yeah. You say, well, I used to be a poet. Like I used to do a lot of writing.
And you didn't know it?
I didn't even say it. That was all you.
No, we will definitely talk about Tom's rapping days and post up a picture for you all to see as well.
Well, you already called me out for idolizing Eminem.
But yes, this last productivity drain is one of the worst because the word hustle is used very freely in this industry. And entrepreneurs kind of wear it as a badge of honor, like, oh, I'm hustling 24/7, and are you hustling? If you're not hustling, you're not going to be successful. And it's all a load of bull.
Well, I was going to say, like, my favorite posts are, we're all about building our businesses so that we can do the things we want. And when I see somebody say, oh, I'm not watching the Super Bowl, I'm hustling all night, it's like you're missing the point. Like, and it replaces Super Bowl with whatever you like to do.
Anywhere.
But if you're depriving yourself of like living life and enjoying it so you can hustle, like you've got your mindset backwards on why you're building a business. And
we are anti-hustle.
Yeah, and that's not to say that you're not going to have to work hard.
Correct.
Like building a business is hard. Like, especially when you got everything else with life involved. So you're going to have to work hard. We're not downplaying that.
No.
but this thought that you got to work
all the time
and like 24/7 and not sleep and not take care of yourself, like that's a quick recipe to get to burnout and to run into depression and all this other stuff that comes up.
The key phrase that I hear people use that I absolutely agree with is we all need to learn how to work smarter, not harder. So just because you're working 10 hours past when you get home from your day job and you're doing all of these things, that doesn't actually mean you're getting anywhere. That doesn't mean you're moving forward. It could just mean you're going around in circles in a hamster wheel because you're doing tasks that don't have any value to your business.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things I think that why people run into this, you often look at other successful people and you try to figure out what are their secrets to success.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes what you see the surface level stuff and you don't actually see behind the curtain.
Right.
And I say this because I've been able to work with a lot of big businesses. We've been able to work with a lot of entrepreneurs. So we get to see the background of the successful businesses versus the non. And like a great example, we use automation in a lot of cases, like for posting on social media and for scheduling things. And so I'll often have people come up to me and they're like, Tom, you're everywhere. Like you're on social media all the time. And so they automatically think they've got to be on social media all the time. The reality is most of that's scheduled. Mm-hmm. So going back to batching, like for our Facebook post, like in our group, I'll sit down and I'll write a bunch of posts on things I'm thinking, and then I'll schedule them all throughout the week. Now, I go back in and comment during the specified periods of time where I've allocated to go on social media, but I'm not there all the time. Mm-hmm. So you see these people that are like spending 16-hour days and 8 are on social media. You're working way too hard and you're not focused on the right things.
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, the word hustle belongs where I grew up with it, in athletics. When your coach tells you to get on the field and hustle, you hustle.
Or you're going to do laps.
But in the workspace, it's not something that you should be attaining. And I say this as well. Obviously, we are family people. We have kids. We're married. We look at building a business to make our lives better, not building the business solely to be successful and make lots of money. So to me, if you're hustling all the time, or that's the mentality that you have, you're not putting your family as your first priority. And people may disagree with me, but I honestly feel that you shouldn't even have the word hustle in your vocabulary unless you're a coach or an athlete, and then you can throw it in there. But I think it's all about knowing what you're working towards, what are your goals, what are the end results that you want to have, and doing the right tasks to get you there. Now, as you said, that may mean that you're going to be doing more work in some periods of your life than others. That's okay, as long as you keep that in your mind and you still make time for the people in your life that you love. Because, as you said, it's very easy to work, and then work yourself right into burnout, which doesn't help anybody, because then you probably don't have the business you want. And now you've started affecting your loved ones, because if that's all you've been doing, most likely your relationships have been harmed by that. So now you're burned out and people in your life aren't happy with you. Yeah. So you've put yourself into this corner and you've got to dig your way out to get something back, as opposed to if you've defined your goals clearly, if you know what you want, but you've given yourself enough time to make it happen, you're more likely to succeed and have a happier life while you're doing it.
Well, and with that, what I find with a lot of people is that they just fill their days with the wrong activities. And oftentimes there's a couple of key activities that can get you to your result, but we don't ever define those. So for example, I was working with a client the other day, and she was like, we're like, what are your goals for the next 90 days? We'll get those laid out, and then we'll figure out the key actions. And so one of her goals was, well, I want to grow my email list, I want to grow my Instagram, and I want to grow my Facebook following. And so I just simply asked why. And ultimately, the theory was, if I grow those, then I'm going to get more sales. And I said, so the goal is to get more sales, right? Okay, so let's figure out the fastest way to get more sales, and we're going to focus directly on those activities. And yes, like building your email list and doing SEO and all these other things are going to be longer term things that you want to sprinkle in. But for the most part, you like, how do you make more sales? You identify who you want to sell to, you go and find those people, and then you work them along the process until they're ready to buy. So that's where most people should be focusing their activity. But when most people plan out their day, they don't think that way, and they end up having to spend a lot more time because, to your point, they're not working smart, they're working hard.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen a lot of people who've used that method. Like, oh, I went and I grew my email list to this, and I grew my following, and I've got all these followers. They're not making any sales. So they've got a list of, I think, what was it, like 2,000 people. They've got a Facebook, a group, and a following on Instagram. And they're like, yeah, I did all this stuff I was supposed to do. I grew my audience. Nobody's buying from me.
Yep. And that's
that doesn't do you any good.
Yeah, well, a lot of people think like, oh, well, sometimes it's just they look at other people and they're like, oh, well, this person has 10,000 followers. So if I get 10,000 followers, then I'll have the same income that they are. But that's, once again, they're only looking at the surface, and they're not seeing that behind the scenes, that person is reaching out to people. That person has really understood how to get people to buy and where their people are at.
Research.
They've done all that stuff. So if you're just looking at the surface and you're trying to model people that way, you're missing out on the key activities they're doing that ultimately drive their business forward.
And we also forget the one rule of social media. Don't take everything as you see it, because somebody could have 10,000 followers and somebody could look like they make a lot of money. You don't actually know that they do, because most people online are fudging the numbers a little bit. Not everyone is honest about how much money they make. Not everyone is honest about, here's my top line, this is what my revenue of my business is, but here's the actual amount I bring home. So you've got to keep that in mind as well, that you may think all those people out there that you're aspiring to and that you look up to are doing like amazing. They might just be doing okay. You don't know.
Yeah.
So don't just assume just because somebody has 10,000 followers in their audience and they look like they're doing great. Don't assume that they are. You don't know what their home situation is. You don't know what their life situation is. You don't know how much money they actually are making.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, like the cost of a lot of businesses. I mean, we've worked with businesses, and then we've even talked to other people that, they talk about, oh, well, we're a $3 million a year business. Mm-hmm. And then like they let it slip that, we spent $2.8 million on marketing. It's like, oh, so after you take marketing out, you've got $200,000 left. And then when you take your other business expenses, you just worked really hard and spent a lot of money to make $3 million, only to actually take home maybe $50,000.
Yeah.
So that's the thing too. And there's a lot of that where things sound impressive from the outside. More often than not, they're not nearly as impressive on the back end.
Yeah, because everyone wants everyone to think that they're doing great. I mean, let's be honest. That's human nature. You want people to think that you're doing amazing. You want everyone on social media posts amazing pictures of their family. And I mean, we even have like family photo shoots. Everyone's like, oh, your family's so beautiful. I'm like, yeah, we set that up. That was a photo shoot. Like, our family doesn't look like that all the time. Usually I'm in sweatpants. Our kid's hair is a mess.
Pretty sure you're in sweatpants right now.
I'm in sweatpants right now. Totally honest. And our house is never clean. So like, it's just, everyone shows the picture that they want other people to see. And we all have stuff that's hidden behind the scenes. Now, some people out there are more honest about behind the scenes, which is awesome. We try to be as honest as possible about behind the scenes, and probably will start to do so more. But yeah, just keep that in mind when you're looking at this stuff. And again, we went off on a huge tangent.
We did, but you know what? Like, these are all important things, and ultimately, I think it ties back, because when you really get clear and understand how things work, then you can figure out where you should be focusing time, where you shouldn't be. And ultimately what this comes down to is, if you identify the key activities that are going to get you to your goal, and you then go back and you're not multitasking, you're not getting distracted, you're focusing on those, that's ultimately what successful people do. And that's what's going to help you get successful.
All right. So we've got some homework, of course, for this episode. I want you to go back and listen to our 5 biggest drains and identify which of those, if there's multiple, is keeping you from getting more done. And then making and actually like implementing some steps for yourself to do less of those things.
Well, I was going to say, and so I'll build on yours before I give my homework. But so we talked about the importance of publicly setting that. Mm-hmm. So what I want you guys to do is go to the show notes page at tomandariana.com/15. leave a comment below on what the number one biggest productivity drain is, and then one action you're going to take from this episode to improve on that.
I like that.
All right. And then so my homework is going to be, I want you to, I always talk about this, but I want you to figure out one goal that you want to achieve in the next 90 days. And then I want you to think about what are the 3 key actions that you can take that will directly get you to that goal. So I want you to limit it to 3 because we really want to focus in on what are those key actions that you can be working on.
Mm-hmm. All right. I like it. And we talked about it multiple times throughout the show. If you haven't yet seen our Plan with Purpose post or signed up for our Plan with Purpose free course, you can find the link for that in the show notes page at tomandariana.com/15. And then also we did an episode on this back in our serial startups days. So we'll pull that old episode out.
2 episodes.
Oh yeah, we did.
We went through a whole bunch of.
I kept today at 5 because Tom and I like to talk a lot, and we didn't want the episode to be 2 hours long. So if you want to see the old episodes and listen to those where we talked about a couple more different types of productivity drains, we'll link to those 2 shows in the show notes as well. Book. What's your book today?
All right. So the book today. This is a book, and I've probably said this before too. This is a book that I could have and should have written. I wish I would have. But I'm very happy that it was written. So it's called The One Thing. The Surprising Simply Truth.
Aim it over there, man.
I'm trying to read.
Oh, sorry.
Surprisingly simple truth behind the extraordinary results. And so the reason I'm so happy this book came out was because this is what I coach people on all the time. And now instead of me just trying to coach them, I can actually reference this book.
Go read this book.
Yeah, well, and oftentimes what I found is when I tell people something, they're like, yeah, Tom, that sounds good. But it isn't until they hear it from multiple sources that it kind of verifies it. So basically this book talks about a lot of the stuff that we talked about in this episode, but it really comes down to, I forget the specific quote, I'm going to butcher it, but they challenge people on identify the one thing that if you were to do would make everything else less critical and sometimes not even necessary. And it's basically by really saying, if I were to do this, then I wouldn't have to do the 3 other things. Very quick example. If you have a dishwasher, right? If you simply, when you get done with drinking a glass, you put it in the dishwasher, you now eliminate the step of having to move it from the counter to the dishwasher. Right, so that's a very simple example, but it just goes to show on how if you really identify the key things, you can actually save time because you don't have to do a lot of the other tasks.
I feel like you're totally calling me out on that right now. I'm going to say if you drank all of the milk in the glass, then you wouldn't have to leave it in the refrigerator to then be dumped out and put in the dishwasher.
Yeah, I feel some like little undertones here.
All right, you guys, it's been another great episode with Tom and Ariana, your hosts and lifestyle builders.
And remember, it's your life, your business, your way. And we'll see you next time.
Woo, bye.
Are you frustrated by a lack of momentum in your business? Do you want real-time guidance and support from seasoned entrepreneurs who really care about your results? If you're nodding your head, or awkwardly shouting yes in public somewhere, then we invite you to join Lifestyle Builders, a mentorship program designed to meet you where you are and give you strategic and custom guidance so you can build the business you need for the life you crave. You can find out more at joinlifestylebuilders.com.
Your life, your business, your way. Join Family Entrepreneur Life. Join Family Entrepreneur